Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elle here back again with a brand new early Netflix movie review, and today, all things must come to an end. We are talking about the third and final film of the Kissing Booth franchise in the Kissing Booth Part 3. We're talking pros, we're talking cons, and I'm going to give you all my rankings of all three films and ultimately let you know if it's worth checking out on this spoiler-free review. Before we break it all down, do me a favor and check me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler-free review of the Kissing Booth 3, well, make sure to like and share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but I also appreciate the support. And for all my Kissing Booth fans, in the comment section, let's talk about the franchise as a whole, as well as this film in particularly. Do you think it was a good narrative? Did you have a good laugh? Did you cry at all? And did you think this was a satisfying conclusion to these characters and to the story and to the franchise? Or were you let down by this film? And since we're talking about part 3, let's talk about the other two and your rankings, in particularly what was your favorite and what is your least favorite film in this franchise. Let's discuss it all in the comment section. So yes, I'm talking Kissing Booth 3 because I've seen part 2. I've seen part 1. I reviewed all 3 of these films. I'm going to leave part 1 and 2 reviews in the description below. But listen, I already know I'm not the target audience. I don't particularly like these films. I took a shot on the franchise 3 years ago. Fast forward 3 years later, we're talking about the third one, and here we are. So let's start off with talking a little bit about the story without diving into the details. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've seen 1, you've seen 2, you know how things shook out. So we're opening with part 3, where essentially all of our characters are spending one last summer together before they go off and be adults and go off to college. We have Elle and Noah, and as well as Lee and Rachel spending their time together in this house, which I thought was kind of ridiculous that the parents would allow these teenagers to be in a house together, knowing that they're going off to college. I don't know, man. That sounds like a baby waiting to happen. But nonetheless, they're in this summer vacation home, and our two best friends, Lee and Elle, have this childhood bucket list that they want to complete before they go off to college. So that's kind of the gist of the story. And we have other characters making the return. More particularly, we have characters that we met in part 2, Chloe and Marco, who shake things up. So let's get into my positives. And I have to say, out of all 3 of the films, I thought that the narrative that we have with Elle is the strongest in this film, and in particular the narrative of her becoming an adult and her having to put herself and her priorities before her other friends and family and her boyfriend and all that different stuff. So in this film, man, and it's focused on throughout the film, but I think in the second half, and I'm not gonna lie, the second half is like a legit pretty decent narrative and has some pretty good moments in the second half of this film where it shows you Elle has a lot going on in her life, right? She's dealing with her boyfriend, Noah, right? She's dealing with her best friend, Lee, and them having this bucket list. She has her brother she has to say goodbye to, her dad, who is dating someone in this film by the name of Linda, and she has a job and responsibilities. So I thought that the film really did focus on how Elle is becoming an adult and how all these people in her lives are somewhat like bogging her down and making her lose focus on who she wants to be and what she wants to do in her life. So I thought that the film really does shine a good light on what adulthood looks like. And you have to put your kid, you know, your childlike wonder and all the things you did as a kid aside, and you have to become an adult. So I thought the film did a really good job of focusing on that, as well as I will say there is a moment later on in the film that I thought was pretty sentimental, and I won't give away essentially what it is, but let's just say when we have our two best friends saying goodbye to each other, they have like different versions of them saying goodbye like their younger selves. I thought that was a pretty sentimental scene. So outside of those things, I did not find too many positives. I'm going to jump right into the negatives. First and foremost, I gotta say, when it comes to the character Elle and just the other characters surrounding her, they were extremely annoying in this film. Like, I thought that Lee, he's been annoying in this franchise, but Lee was on another level in this one because it was just like Elle has her boyfriend, she has to get ready for college, she has to say goodbye to her dad, but Lee was just bogging her down throughout this entire episode. It's like, aren't you supposed to be her best friend and supporting the decisions she makes? And he's just like, no, spend time with me, let's do the bucket. It was just very annoying to see Lee, how he was like literally the most childish character in this entire franchise, but in particularly in this film. But more in particularly going back to other characters, I just found to be extremely annoying. Number one, I'm a big fan of Jacob Elordi. I think he is fantastic in Euphoria, but he really has checked out this franchise after part 2. You can tell that he's just doing this for a paycheck. No offense to him, I just think that he's done with this character. We all know the behind the scenes with him and Jodie King separating each other, so I know it has to be awkward working with your ex-girlfriend, but he is essentially not doing that much in this film, and his character is kind of put on the back burner. But also I mentioned how Chloe's back in the mix. They try to give her a storyline that really doesn't work that well for me. But Marco, my man Marco, who I actually felt bad for in part 2 because he was totally pimped out by Elle in that film. But in this film, Marco does a 180. He is a full-on certified simp in this movie, and he is doing some really simpy things in this movie. I'll just kind of leave it at that. Marco took a huge step back as far as the character development, which, you know, there's really not that much development in this franchise, but Marco was a 100% simp in this film. Also, a thing that I found to be a little bit weird was all the original characters from the first one, who I thought were not the best characters, but at least they were characters that had a little bit more things that could bring to the table. They are in this film. I have no idea why. They pretty much could have just been holding furniture and holding, you know, just the lighting, because they had no purpose in this film whatsoever. Rachel, who is Lee's girlfriend in this film, she has one of the most like irrational, most left field decisions that I've ever seen in this franchise. And when you see the film, you know what I'm talking about, but she was a pointless character. And then I don't want to harp too much on the film, because I think the narrative on all three of these films are pretty basic, but these films come out the same year that the author makes the books, and I can tell that because the film feels so rushed in regards to the dialogue and how like unoriginal and just how lazy the dialogue is. The dialogue in this film particularly is like very borderline, like almost improv. And I'll use this for example. I won't say who the characters are. I'll just say character A and character B. Character A says to character B, "I'll always protect her." Character B says, "Hey, you remember when you said you always protect her?" Literally in the same scene, seconds after this character say, like, what do you, like the dialogue in this film to me is just atrocious. And throughout this franchise has been very bad writing. But I think this film has some of the worst writing in the entire franchise. And I can go on and on about how, again, I thought the second half was a pretty decent narrative. That first half and the second half, which by the way, or let's just say the third act of the film, when you go to the third act, there are literally like there's probably like actually 4 endings that come down in this film. And I thought that the last ending and like the essential ending of the film, we get this like time jump that I just thought was like so poorly executed. I'll just leave it at that. But in particular, the first act of this film, the first 45 minutes, I don't know who the target audience they were going for, 6-year-olds and younger. It was so goofy, so ridiculous, just like, is this a Disney Channel movie? I was very confused of the first half of this film. I felt it was very lazy and just very childish and very ridiculous, if I'm being honest. But hey, those are my cons. I have a lot more, but I don't want to dive too deep and make this to a rant. But before I give you my score, my overall thoughts, and my rankings of all 3 of these films, if you stuck around to this video to this point, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure that you hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. Overall, like I said, I know I'm not the target audience. I don't want to bash this film too much. I do appreciate how the film tackles what adulthood looks like, and sometimes, and most of the times, selfish as it may sound, you have to put yourself first. You have to put your mental health first, your career first, before you consider boyfriends and best friends and dads and brothers. You have to put yourself first. And I think the film in the second half is at its best, and it has a really good narrative and kind of telling that story of what a woman looks like going into womanhood, right? I thought that was a pretty good narrative. But outside of those things, the first half is for kids. The third act has way too many endings. The dialogue is absolutely atrocious. The acting at this point, the characters are just plain goofy, ridiculous, kind of like I said, Disney characters. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give to Kissing Booth 3 a 2 out of 5. Again, I appreciate the narrative about adulthood, but outside of those things, this film is not the worst of the bunch, which brings me to my rankings. Even though I'm giving this a 2 out of 5, I'm going to say, for me personally, just because I do appreciate the narrative, I'm going to go 2. I think Kissing Booth 2, which is not a good film, I'm going to say that's my favorite out of the 3. Then I'm going to say 3 is my number 2, and then part 1 is the worst of the bunch. So that's my rankings. Let me know your rankings. Let me know your pros, your cons. Did you enjoy the way that this story wrapped up? Do you want to see a part 4? Let's discuss it all in the comments below. For me personally, like I said, I actually, and I can't believe this is a franchise, but I think that To All the Boys Before is a much better franchise than this. I think the writing, the acting, the narrative is just so much stronger than this franchise. So that's just my personal opinion. I want to know your opinion. Again, your pros, your cons, your rankings of all 3, and let's have a discussion about it in the comment section. Thank you all for watching this review. Again, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the bell. That way you don't miss any of my other content. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you enjoyed this review. We'll see you in the next video.